What if the biggest threat to Windows isn't Apple, Linux, or even changing hardware trends, but Microsoft itself? That's the uncomfortable reality many users are starting to accept in 2025. While Microsoft keeps presenting Windows 11 as the future of personal computing, the numbers tell a very different story. Adoption reportedly dropped to around 28% in March 2025, down sharply from 35% just 4 months earlier, despite internal expectations pushing far higher. Even more alarming, Windows 10 installations are rising again, with users actively rolling back after trying Windows 11. Think about that for a second. People are willingly choosing an unsupported operating system over Microsoft's newest flagship product. That isn't hesitation. That's rejection. What makes this situation extraordinary is how unusual this behavior is in the tech world. Most users resist upgrades by simply delaying them. They don't usually spend hours wiping drives, reinstalling systems, and restoring apps just to go backward. Yet forums, tech communities, and tutorial platforms have been flooded with downgrade guides since early 2025. Search traffic around reverting from Windows 11 to Windows 10 exploded, and major online communities have been filled with daily complaints about system instability, design frustrations, and workflow disruptions. For Microsoft, this represents something much deeper than criticism. It signals a collapse in user confidence, the kind of trust loss that can take years to rebuild, if it can be rebuilt at all. A major reason for the backlash comes down to performance. Independent testing across gaming and productivity benchmarks has repeatedly shown that Windows 11 often performs worse than Windows 10 on identical hardware. In gaming, frame rates can dip by 3% to 8%, while some users report much larger drops depending on setup and optimization. Productivity software isn't immune either. Application launches, rendering tasks, and heavy computational workloads have shown measurable slowdowns. For professionals, even small delays compound into major losses over weeks and months. That's why some power users, researchers, and competitive gamers have started moving toward Linux distributions or even Mac OS, where performance often feels more predictable and streamlined. Then there's the design problem, and for many users, this is where frustration turns into anger. Microsoft removed or restricted features that had been part of Windows for decades. The taskbar lost flexibility. The right-click menu now often requires extra step. The Start menu redesign stripped away customization options people depended on. These may sound minor individually, but together they disrupt workflows people have built over years. Familiar actions suddenly take longer. Simple tasks now require extra click. It's the kind of friction that feels small at first but becomes exhausting after hundreds of interactions every day. Users don't see these changes as innovation. They see them as unnecessary obstacles. The addition of aggressive ecosystem integration has only intensified the backlash. From mandatory Microsoft account pushes to cloud service prompts and promotional content appearing inside system tools, many users feel like Windows has shifted from being their operating system to being Microsoft's marketing platform. Even File Explorer, one of the most basic utilities in Windows, has become a place where users encounter service promotions. For people who paid for their hardware and software, this feels intrusive. It creates the impression that ownership has been replaced by subscription-driven control, where every interaction is nudging users deeper into Microsoft's broader ecosystem. And then there's Copilot, Microsoft's aggressive AI integration strategy. On paper, AI assistance sounds like the natural next step for modern computing. In practice, many users describe it as distracting, unnecessary, and intrusive. Rather than feeling like a helpful assistant, it often feels like an interruption layered on top of existing workflows. Professionals who rely on focus-heavy environments don't want random prompts or suggestions while working. Many have disabled it, only to find updates restoring features they intentionally turned off. That cycle creates resentment fast. When software repeatedly overrides user preferences, it sends a message that control belongs to the company, not the person using the machine. The market response is becoming harder to ignore. Linux desktop usage has reportedly doubled year over year in some measurement. Mac enterprise deployments continue climbing. Even Chromebooks, once dismissed as limited devices, are seeing stronger business adoption in specific sectors. These shifts may still represent a minority compared to Windows' overall dominance, but momentum matters. Once organizations begin investing in alternative ecosystems, software support follows. Developers prioritize where growth exists. That's how dominant platforms lose relevance, not through one massive collapse, but through thousands of smaller decisions that gradually shift the center of gravity elsewhere. At its core, this situation reflects a deeper problem inside Microsoft's strategy. Many users feel that Windows is no longer designed primarily for them. Instead, it appears increasingly shaped around telemetry collection, AI positioning, subscription expansion, and ecosystem lock-in. Every forced feature, every removed option, and every disruptive update reinforces that perception. History has shown what happens when companies stop listening to their user base. Dominance creates confidence, confidence becomes complacency, and complacency opens the door for disruption. Whether Microsoft corrects course or doubles down will define the next era of desktop computing, because if users keep feeling ignored, they won't keep waiting. They'll leave.
Windows 12! More and more details are coming out about the next OS from Microsoft that's codenamed Hudson Valley Next, and as you would expect, it's going to be AI-based. Most of the details indicate that the AI experience that everyone is complaining about in 11 is going to be the foundation of what 12 is built upon, and it's going to have even more strict hardware requirements.
Windows made it worse. Windows had 11,000 security vulnerabilities in 2025. That's an 845% increase from 2024.
Bill Gates built Windows into the most dominant operating system in human history. He put it on every desk, in every home, on every continent. For decades, nobody questioned it. But right now, in 2026, the man who called Linux a cancer is watching that same cancer become the cure, and the numbers prove it. Here is what is actually happening. Linux desktop market share was sitting at 4.8% in January 2025. By January 2026, it hit 14.2%. That is 196% growth in 12 months. Ubuntu alone pulled 17.3 million downloads in a single month compared to just 2.1 million the year before. That is a 724% increase. Linux Mint jumped from 1.4 million to 8.9 million downloads in the same period. These are not nerd numbers anymore. These are numbers that make boardrooms go quiet. Now here is why this is happening. Microsoft quietly confirmed they dropped from 1.4 billion active Windows users down to just over 1 billion. Nearly 400 million users gone. And leaked internal Microsoft telemetry from January 2026 shows the full picture. Only 424 million total active Windows devices remain globally. Of those, only 89 million can actually run Windows 12. That means 335 million perfectly working computers are being declared obsolete. Not because they are broken, not because they are slow, because Microsoft needs them to be. The leaked Windows 12 requirements are brutal. Intel 10th generation or newer. AMD Ryzen 4000 series or newer. 16 GB RAM minimum. 8 GB machines are explicitly blocked. DirectX 12 Ultimate Graphic. A dedicated NPU with a minimum 40 TOPS capability. That last one is the killer. An NPU, or neural processing unit, is a chip that barely existed in consumer computers before 2024. Your 2022 gaming PC with a Ryzen 7 5800X and an RTX 3080? Incompatible. Your company's 2023 business laptop that cost $1,400 and is still under warranty? Incompatible. Microsoft surveyed 12,000 of their own users and asked what they wanted in Windows 12. Better performance, less intrusive updates, more privacy controls. Not a single top 10 response mentioned AI. Yet Windows 12 is being built entirely around mandatory AI that nobody asked for. And it gets worse. Leaked documents describe Copilot being integrated at the kernel level. It cannot be uninstalled. It cannot be disabled. It monitors every file you open, every website you visit, every document you create in real time, and sends that data to Microsoft servers with zero opt-out. The Electronic Frontier Foundation called it mass surveillance. Ireland's Data Protection Commission opened an official investigation on February 21st. The FTC sent a letter on February 23rd demanding an explanation. Privacy International filed complaints across 17 countries. On top of that, the leaked pricing shows Windows 12 Home at $6.99 per month with no one-time purchase option. Stop paying and your computer enters limited mode. That is not a license. That is a hostage situation. The people selling computers are done with Microsoft. Dell cut Windows to just 20% of their lineup. HP's CEO publicly stated he is grateful HP is no longer dependent on Microsoft. Their Linux laptops sit at 89% customer satisfaction compared to 31% for Windows 11. Asus eliminated Windows entirely from their lineup. Lenovo called the Windows 12 leaks full vindication of their decision to move to Linux as their default. System76, a Linux-focused manufacturer, reported 340% sales growth in Q4 2025 and 280% in Q1 2026, driven entirely by what their CEO called Windows refugees. The enterprise math is even more devastating for Microsoft. One Fortune 500 company ran the numbers publicly. They manage 45,000 computers. 31,000 are incompatible with Windows 12. Average age of those machines: 3.2 years, still functional, still under support contracts. Replacing them all costs $62 million. Migrating to Linux costs $4.1 million. That is $57.9 million saved by simply walking away from Windows. Gartner released an emergency analysis telling enterprise clients that Windows 12 requirements may accelerate Linux and Mac adoption by 3 to 5 years ahead of projections. When Gartner says plan for alternatives, enterprises move. Real people are already gone. A small accounting firm in Phoenix with 12 computers from 2018 switched to Ubuntu over one weekend and saved $15,000. A school district in Seattle with 2,800 student computers from 2019 switched to Linux Mint and avoided a $1.7 million budget crisis. A retired man in Melbourne living on a fixed income had Linux Mint installed by a friend's grandson in an afternoon. His 2018 laptop works fine. A developer in Bangalore switched her 2019 ThinkPad to Fedora and her battery life improved 40%. Survey data from Canonical across 50,000 recent Ubuntu downloaders showed 81% came from Windows and 91% reported their so-called obsolete hardware runs perfectly on Linux. The hardware was never the problem. Microsoft knows exactly what is happening. A leaked internal email from a Windows Division VP dated January 18, 2026 reads that desktop Linux reaching 14.2% represents the loss of approximately 38 million users in 12 months and describes it as an existential threat to the Windows consumer business. Another leaked email from the Windows marketing director admits the narrative that Microsoft abandons functional hardware to force expensive upgrades is severely damaging brand trust. Bill Gates posted on LinkedIn during the same week the leaks broke. He did not mention Windows 12 by name. He wrote about how forcing hardware obsolescence through software requirements is not progress, it is extraction. The post reached 4.1 million views and 89,000 comments. Everyone understood what he meant. The man who spent years making sure Linux never threatened Windows is now watching Windows hand Linux its biggest victory, not through competition but through self-destruction. Windows dominated for 30 years by serving users. Windows 12 was designed to serve Microsoft's AI investment strategy. Users see the difference, and they are choosing accordingly.
Oh, Microsoft, how the mighty have fallen.
We're starting to see some very, very just damaging things happening to Windows, especially on the back end.
Microsoft is overloading their operating system with a ton of ads, upsells, and unwanted in-operating system content.
HP just made Windows optional. Let that sink in. The second largest PC manufacturer on the planet, a company that shipped 57 million computers in 2024 alone, just told Microsoft that Windows is no longer the default. It is now the upgrade. Starting Q3 2025, 40% of all HP consumer laptops ship with Linux pre-installed right out of the box. You open it, you power it on, and it boots into Linux. If you want Windows, you pay an extra $75 and specifically request it. Microsoft built a 35-year empire on one single idea. Windows ships on every PC, pre-installed, unavoidable, unquestioned. HP just proved that idea can be taken away. And the numbers behind this decision are brutal. HP did not make this move out of boredom. They ran the math, and the math destroyed Windows. Every single Windows laptop HP ships costs them approximately $138 in Windows-related expenses before they make a single dollar of profit. The Windows license alone runs $52 to $68 per device. Then Windows 11 forced HP to use more expensive hardware, TPM 2.0 chips, faster processors, minimum RAM thresholds, adding another $34 to $47 per unit in manufacturing costs. On top of that, Windows laptops generate 2.3 support calls per device over a 3-year period at roughly $18 per resolved ticket, adding $31.50 per laptop in support costs alone. Then came the return rate. 9.7% of Windows 11 laptops came back within 30 days. Not because the hardware failed, but because Windows frustrated people into giving up. Each return cost HP $68 in processing and resale loss. Add it all together on a laptop selling for $400 to $600 and Windows was consuming up to 35% of revenue before HP made anything. Linux costs zero in licensing, runs on cheaper hardware, and generates a fraction of the complaints. This was not a political decision. It was pure arithmetic. Before going public, HP ran a quiet test in early 2024. They selected 40,000 laptops, loaded them with Ubuntu, listed them on HP.com with zero marketing, zero promotion, priced $50 to $75 cheaper than the Windows equivalent, and simply watched. Those laptops sold out in 11 days. Customer reviews averaged 4.6 stars versus 3.8 stars for comparable Windows models. Support call volume dropped 81%. Linux buyers called 0.4 times on average compared to 2.1 times for Windows buyers. Return rates collapsed from 9.7% down to 1.8%. And the margins on Linux laptops were 127% higher than on Windows laptop. By December 2024, Linux laptops represented 8% of HP's direct sales, and they were the most profitable 8% the company had. When HP's leadership saw those numbers, the decision was already made. When Microsoft found out, not from HP but from retailers preparing their 2025 product lineups, they panicked. First, Microsoft offered HP a 30% discount on Windows licensing. HP declined. Even discounted, Windows still costs more than free, and licensing was never the only problem. Then Microsoft threatened to pull approximately $240 million in annual marketing development fund. HP did the math again. Switching 40% of their consumer lineup to Linux saves a projected $1.12 billion annually. Losing $240 million still leaves HP $880 million ahead. Then Microsoft went legal, claiming HP's contracts required Windows to be prominently featured as the default. HP's legal team reviewed every clause and found nothing requiring Windows as the default, only that HP offer it. Microsoft backed down quietly because terminating HP's license would not stop HP from selling Linux machines. It would only stop them from selling Windows at all. That hurts Microsoft far more than it hurts HP. HP did not stay alone for long. Dell, which shipped 46 million PCs in 2024, began restructuring its storefront, giving Linux laptops equal visual prominence to Windows machines. When Dell launched an Ubuntu-loaded XPS 13 at $120 below the Windows version, first-month sales came in at nearly 3 times the projected number. Return rates told the real story. Windows 11 laptops returning at 26%, the Ubuntu version at 4%. Lenovo, the largest PC manufacturer in the world, reported customer demand for non-Windows devices increased 340% year-over-year and entered active discussions with Canonical and Red Hat. Asus announced a shift of 40% of their consumer laptop production toward Chrome OS for 2026. Combined, HP, Dell, and Lenovo alone could account for nearly 60 million Linux PCs per year, representing 31% of the entire global PC market without Windows as the default. Governments are not waiting either. Germany's state of Schleswig-Holstein migrated 30,000 government computers off Windows, saving 15 million euros every single year with a one-time transition cost of just 9 million euros. Paid back in under 12 months. France ordered all 2.5 million civil servants to migrate off Windows and onto Linux by autumn 2026. South Korea ordered 1.2 million government computers off Windows after their cybersecurity agency discovered Windows 11 sending 2,847 encrypted data packets per day to Microsoft servers they could not verify or control. And a Microsoft France executive confirmed under oath in front of the French Senate that he could not guarantee European citizen data stored in Microsoft's cloud would never be handed to the US government. 3 words: no, I cannot. Spoken on the permanent record of a sitting legislature. Every data sovereignty promise Microsoft ever made died in that moment. Meanwhile, Windows 11 adoption sits at just 28% to 31% of all Windows installations. Microsoft projected 55% by now. They missed by 26 percentage points. Linux desktop usage doubled in 12 months, going from 3.1% to 6.2%. Windows' overall market share dropped from 73% 2 years ago to 57.8% today. Gartner projects Windows dropping below 50% global market share within 18 months. And Bill Gates, a man who has not run Microsoft since 2000, has reportedly been pulled back into emergency board meetings. He told the board the company had maybe 12 months to reverse course before the damage to the Windows franchise becomes permanent. The executives resisted. The meeting ended without consensus. Windows is not being attacked. It is being bypassed. And when the default disappears, the dominance follows.